Hello and welcome back to Above and Beyond CDL Driving Academy's permit preparation course. This will be the third section of the general knowledge, section 2 of the Minnesota CDL manual. At Above and Beyond CDL Driving Academy, we offer Class A and Class B training. Class A is in a manual and automatic transmission. You train in both of them and test in whichever one you feel comfortable in testing in. Class B, we only train in an automatic transmission. We also offer customized training for those that have previously held a license or for businesses that have a driver need. And we also offer the hazmat endorsement training as well, which you will need to add the hazardous material endorsement to your CDL driver's license. As I said before, do not pay or order a manual off of the internet. You can get them for free from your state Department of Public Safety or the state Department of Transportation, whichever one your state has. All you can do is type up your state and type in CDL manual for the state of Minnesota. Here's the one that the state offers for free. You can study sections 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Pretty much all the CDL manuals nationwide follow the AMVA manual, so they're pretty much all going to be the same. Even if you don't live in Minnesota, this is pertinent training for you. Also, there are practice tests at the Wisconsin DMV practice tests. They're all over the internet, but as I always say, practice tests do not take the place of good old-fashioned studying. Study the manual and you should be just fine. There are practice quizzes in the manual itself. If you can answer those questions, there is probably a good chance that those will be the exact same questions that will be on your test or variations of them. Okay, moving on, and driving at night. A large portion of your driving time may be at night. So you should probably feel comfortable driving at night if you are going to be a commercial truck driver. If you are required to wear some sort of glasses or lenses, always recommend that you keep a spare in your truck. It is actually a DOT regulation as well. Yeah, avoid wearing those tinted type sunglasses at night. They really fatigue your eyes and actually make you worse, make you more tired. Also, while you're driving through lights, don't stare directly at the lights. If cars are passing you, high beams, whatever, do not stare directly at the lights because that glare can actually blind you. Make sure that windshield is nice and clean so you're not getting those glare spots off of the dirt on your windshield as well. Fatigue is both a physical and a mental tiredness. It is actually the leading cause of accidents. There was actually a sleeping poll that found that 60% have admitted that they've driven fatigued. In reality, I would say that number is considerably higher. And 36% have admitted that they've fallen asleep behind the wheel. In reality, I'd be betting that is probably closer to the 60 or 70% rule. So who is at risk of driving at fatigue? Those that do not get enough sleep at night are probably going to be the biggest fatigue drivers out there. Those that suffer from insomnia or sleep debt. Sleep debt is where you're borrowing sleep from one night and then hoping it'll pay back towards the end of the week. Driving long distances without your proper brakes. Remember, you are required to stop within the first 50 miles and then every 3 hours or 150 miles after that. And truck driving is one of those careers where you could be driving at night one week and then the next week you're driving at daytime. So you have to make sure that you take care of yourself, especially if you're working longer hours. Anything over 60 hours, you increase your risk by 40%. Or more, especially if you're working more than one job. Those that work multiple jobs tend to be more tired while they're driving. And when you're driving those long, rural, dark roads, especially if you're changing those time zones, or if you're on medication, you have a higher risk of fatigue as well. So what are some of the signs of fatigue? Would be things like difficulty focusing. You're forgetting the miles that you're driving. All of a sudden you're going from Albert Lee up to St. Paul and you don't remember anything in between. You're nodding continually off, you're drifting in your lane, or you're just plain old irritable when you're normally a happy-go-lucky person like myself. How can you avoid fatigue? Obviously, number one answer, make sure you are getting plenty of sleep. I know a lot of people don't believe this, but you need somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day. That number changes constantly. It depends on who's doing the study, but it always tends to stay somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. Also, you want to make sure that you're planning those routes carefully. You want to make sure that you're not just driving long, dark roads for 9 hours straight. You want to try to get into nice lit areas that will kind of draw your attention and keep you more focused. Try to drive during your normal awake times. If you're allowed to have a passenger, of course, take that passenger. If you're taking any kind of medications, make sure that you're talking to a doctor to make sure that they will not cause issues with driving, and make sure that you get plenty of exercise as well. During the day, you can wear polarized sunglasses. They don't actually darken your surroundings. They actually just take the glare away so that your eyes don't get fatigued. Try to keep yourself cool. Avoid those heavy meals, especially as we go into like Thanksgiving or Christmas, where you have those heavy turkey ham meals, and then you go drive for a long time. Obviously, you're going to get tired as well. Make sure that you take those breaks. If you start getting tired, stop driving and rest. It's amazing what a 15-minute nap will do. It'll wake you up considerably. Try to avoid any of those false substitutes for sleep, things like the 5-hour energy drinks, Mountain Dew, coffee, things like that. They tend to wake you up right away, but then as they start to go away, you'll notice that you feel more and more drained as time goes on. Poor lighting is going to have a huge issue, especially when you're out in the country where the animals may be running across the road. We can only see what is lighted, and as we're approaching those cities, that background light may actually drown out some of the more important objects around us. Then we also got to be concerned about drunk drivers. If we're driving close to the time that bars are closing, we have to be more alert to make sure that those drunk drivers don't end up causing us any kind of issues on the roadway. Some of the vehicle factors that can lead to fatigue, some things that can help us to eliminate fatigue are going to be using our high beams whenever possible. Make sure those headlights are clean, because they can actually reduce that effectiveness by 50%. So if you're using your low beams, you have dirty headlights, instead of going 250 feet, you're only going to go maybe 150 to 200 feet. Use those high beams whenever possible, because they will almost double the distance that we can see in front of us. From 250 up to 500 feet, it will help considerably. But none of that's going to do any good if your lights are out of adjustment, meaning they're pointing down at the ground rather than pointing up towards the horizon like they should be. We also need to make sure, like I've talked about in other sections, that we are adjusting our speed so that we can stop within our vision. And it's also very important that we do a pre-trip inspection before we leave to make sure all of our lights are working. Those marker lights, so we can see the rear of our trailer as we're making those turns, become extremely important, because otherwise you can't see the back of your trailer. But you also want to make sure all those on the roadway around you can see you as well. You want to keep the windshield and your mirror clean. Make sure that your mirrors are in adjustment, and make sure that you don't have any of those cracks or chips that can cause glare on your windshield. Not only do you want to do a pre-trip inspection on your truck, but you want to do a pre-trip inspection on yourself too. Make sure that you are in a proper mindset and you are well rested enough to drive that truck in a safe fashion. When we're driving in fog, it's very easy to outdrive our sight. So we want to make sure that we're obeying all those fog-related warnings. If there's a wall of fog coming up, we want to make sure that we're slowed down to a proper speed before entering into that fog. And if it's extremely bad, turn on your four-way flashers, obviously. And then also use your low beams. There's water vapor in the air and fog that can actually shine those high beams back towards you, creating glare. You also got to be concerned about other vehicles on the roadway. If you do happen to have to pull over on the side of the road for any reason at all, try to avoid it as much as you can. Get into a driveway or into a parking lot or somewhere safe. But if you have to stop, make sure you get those reflectors out right away. Don't even wait to 10 minutes. Get them out right away, and make sure while you're putting them out that you're listening for traffic and watching for traffic, because they may not see you in enough time to avoid hitting you. Wintertime, living in the area climate that we do right now, we're hitting into winter. It is the fall right now. We got to make sure that we're doing a proper vehicle inspection. We're going to check the coolant level to make sure that we are going to have heat. Make sure that our defrosting and heating equipment is working. The windshield wipers and are working properly, making contact with our windshield, and that we have enough washer fluid to wash that gunk off of our windshields as we go. We're going to have to fill that up considerably more. And one thing a lot of people forget about is checking their tires. If you're at the end of the life of your tire, you're not going to have a lot of tread or a lot of traction on the roadways for coming to a stop and for getting traction for getting going. Also, if you're going to be driving in a mountainous area where tire chains are recommended, make sure that you have a proper set for the tires that you are driving. You don't want to have an oversized set that's going to fall off, or you don't want to have a too small of a set that you can't even connect the chains onto your tires. There are some areas where the Department of Transportation will pull you over and make you put chains on your truck. Make sure all your lights and reflectors are working properly. Make sure your windows and mirrors are clean and adjusted for you. Make sure your mirror heaters are working as well anytime that's snowing, so you can keep that moisture off, as well as watching for accumulating ice or snow on certain components of your truck. Your handholds and your steps can become very slippery, or your grill can get snowed over, and then you end up overheating. And obviously the truck is going to be idling a lot more, so you want to make sure that exhaust system is working properly. It's not leaking into the cab, creating issues. When you are driving in slippery surfaces, make sure that you start gently and slowly, and then also check for ice on the roadway as well. One good thing to check for is ice buildup on your mirrors. It's very easy to see that on your mirrors. If it's building up on your mirrors, then you know it's probably building up on the roadway. Make sure that you adjust your speed, slow down sooner, and slow down excessively for when you're going to be stopping. And also watch for those wet brakes. They decrease your braking power. They will apply unevenly, and sometimes they will grab extremely hard on some brakes, and other ones will not grab as easy as well. When you are driving through water, obviously you wouldn't be driving like this truck is, but make sure that you're going through a lower gear. You're not riding your brakes at all. And before you start speeding up, dry those brakes out by holding constant pressure on them for a mile or two to get those brakes dry. And before you actually get back up to highway speeds, make sure that your brakes are working properly. Hot weather poses a lot of extreme risks for our vehicles. We're not made to be driving in extremely hot temperatures. So instead of stopping every 3 hours or 150 miles, we're going to want to stop every 2 hours or 100 miles. Remember that the pressure inside your tires will increase. Don't ever lower down your pressure on a hot day, because eventually that tire will cool down and then you'll have a low tire. Got to make sure that we do that pre-trip on our vehicle to make sure that our oil is at the proper level for cooling our engine down, and obviously that coolant level is at the proper level as well. High speeds will tend to put a lot more pressure on that engine, so that engine can overheat if you drive at extremely high temperature or speeds. If you do end up getting an overheated vehicle, don't remove the hot radiator cap, even if it's not overheated, because what will happen is that coolant is under extreme pressure. When you go to remove that oil cap, it could fly up and hit you in the head and spray hot antifreeze all over yourself. Check your belts to make sure that they are working properly and have the proper amount of free play in them. They're not cracked or damaged. Check your hoses to make sure there's no abrasions, bulges, and cuts. And then you also got to watch those cracks on the roadway, because our road beds are black. They tend to absorb heat. The longer the day goes on, that heat will be absorbed farther down. Well, the lower layers of the pavement will start to turn into a liquid, because they're not cooling at all from the air temperature. They're only being heated by the sun. So then as you drive across the plate of asphalt, that tar can actually bleed through those cracks and cause a lot of damage to the undercarriage of your trucks. Railroad crossings, we already talked a little bit about. There are 6 different offenses that will get you disqualified, But there are two different types of railroad crossings. There's a passive crossing where there's no traffic control device whatsoever, and then there's the active that has the actual traffic control device. It'll take our commercial motor vehicles about 14 seconds across a single track, and it can take 15 to 20 seconds to cross over that double track. When we're driving across a railroad track, if we are driving a manual transmission, we are not allowed to shift on the railroad tracks. The reason being because if you stall out or you lose a gear and that vehicle comes to a complete stop, you're putting everybody around you in danger. So they take that as being a disqualifying offense because if you stop or stall on the railroad tracks. We also got to make sure that we're watching for those hang-ups on those low-slung units like the drop deck trailers or those 53-foot trailers being hauled by a single axle tractor. Remember, that is also a disqualifying offense as well. So why do you think driving in Minnesota is different than driving in the mountains? Because gravity is going to play a role in your speed. We're pretty much a primarily flat state in the state of Minnesota, but if you go over where the mountains ranges are, gravity is going to pull that truck and want it to go faster. And we as drivers have to stop that by using a combination of the engine braking and our service brakes as well. So we need to make sure that we're in a higher RPM as we start to go down those mountains and using that engine brake so that we don't use those service brakes too much to where we're causing wear and tear on the service brakes as well. If you do happen to lose your brakes, you can use what's called an escape ramp. Basically what it does is it's a ramp that will stop runaway vehicles without injury. It's either a counter slope or it's a material that will sink the truck down into it and cause it to come to a complete stop. It's used in steep road areas. If you do end up going into an escape ramp, you are not legally allowed to drive that vehicle out of the escape ramp. It has to be towed and repaired by a shop. Remember now, your service brakes are going to be a supplemental effect to the engine braking effect. So we use the engine braking as the main way of slowing our vehicle down, and then we'll use the service brakes as a supplement. Unfortunately, we are going to face some sort of driving emergencies. Stopping is not always going to be the safest way to do it. So we're going to have to, at some point in time, probably steer around some sort of a hazard in the roadway or an emergency. The easiest way to steer around is to go over on the right side of the road. But unfortunately, sometimes you will have to go onto the left side of the road. This is where using your mirrors is extremely important. So you have that safety cushion around your vehicle. You know where everybody is, so you know instantly what direction to go. If you do have to leave the roadway, biggest thing you should try to do is keep the vehicles in a straight line. A vehicle in a straight line is controlled. A vehicle in a jackknife position is out of control. If you can, try to avoid braking, especially on those soft surfaces. And if you can, keep one set of wheels on the pavement if at all possible. And whenever time is necessary, go ahead and counter steer to keep your truck on the road. At some point in time, you're going to experience tire failure. It's going to be extremely loud. It's going to sound almost like a shotgun going off. It'll wake you up right away. You will feel a little bit of a vibration. You may feel it in your steering wheel. If it does happen to you, hold your steering wheel firmly and stay off of your brakes. If you use your brakes, you're going to basically be over. Your other wheels are going to compensate for that one brake that isn't attached to the ground anymore because of the blown wheel. Once you are stopped, check all your tires to make sure no other tire has any issue in case you ran over something, some sort of debris on the roadway, and then look for damage to other components on your truck. In the case of this picture right here, I'm guessing you probably ripped off an airliner or something pretty much along those lines. So make sure you check underneath the truck for any kind of damage. If you do have to stop quickly, make sure that you stop quickly and safely by using controlled braking. That's going to be where we just hold steady pressure on our brakes. The whole purpose is we want to keep that truck in a straight line so that we don't have lose control of our vehicle. We also want to avoid stab braking. That's like the old-fashioned pumping your brakes. All that does now is that counteracts your anti-lock brake system. So we want to make sure that we are uh, using controlled braking. Nice steady pressure on the brakes. Don't jam on the brakes, just put them to the point of almost locking them up. Our biggest goal here is to keep braking away that keeps our vehicle straight and in control. If you experience brake failure, downshift if you can. It's going to be very hard, especially if you're going downhill to downshift. Try pumping your brakes. This is last resort, obviously. If you have to, you try using that parking brake. I mean, that's not really going to help much because you only have one set of brake pads at each wheel. And if they're not working, it doesn't matter what kind of brakes you use, you're not going to be able to brake the vehicle. So, and then find that escape ramp that we talked about. Anti-lock braking systems are a computerized system that keeps your wheel from locking up and skidding. It only activates when the wheels are about to lock up. It's meant to keep your vehicle from skidding. So if it senses that one wheel is spinning faster than the other wheel, it'll loosen up the brakes that are on the wheel that isn't spinning as fast. If your ABS system fails, you will still have brakes. You just won't have the anti-lock brake function. So then you will have to resort to pumping your brakes. Most vehicles will have an ABS light. When you start the truck up, it should go out after a few seconds or once you reach over 5 miles per hour. ABS systems do not allow you to drive any faster or any closer. You still can have power or a steer skid because those aren't using brakes. Those are skids that happen because you tried to put too much power on or you oversteered. Try to maintain vehicle control, but doesn't mean you can stop in a shorter distance, or it doesn't add any kind of braking power as well. And it won't compensate for any bad brakes at all. Remember, you only have one set of brakes and one set of at each wheel. And it only activates when the brakes are about to lock up. ABS is required on all tractors, air brake equipped tractors after March 1st, 1997. All other air brake equipped vehicles after March 1st, 1998. And on all hydraulically brake equipped vehicles after March 1st of 1999. Remember, it is the same braking technique as non-ABS. Use controlled braking at all times. So how do you know if your vehicle has ABS? Obviously, you want to look at your manufacturing year. Remember, 97 for tractors, towing tractors, that is, for semi-tractors. 98 for all other vehicles, and 99 for hydraulically brake equipped vehicles. You can also look for that ABS lamp that we were talking about, or the light on the side of the trailer, or look for an electronic control unit under the vehicle, which is a gray box which looks just like this on the left hand side, or you can look for that wire that goes into your hub that comes off your axle into your hub. Pretty much the manufacturing year is going to be the key to that. Okay, and we believe we have one more section to finish up general knowledge, and then we'll be on to air brakes.